Okay, welcome back, everybody, and we are here at 1:30 with, we are here as the E911 Board, and on our agenda today, we only have a continuation of a discussion for the discussing the Revcore and the Eventide recording system. So with that, Chief Knuckles, bring your entourage down with you, and
Yeah.
I'll let you introduce everybody again, and then we'll jump right into this discussion.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Shay Allred, Vernon Knuckles, Chief of Police, Pat Coleman, City Attorney, and Kelly's still sitting back there, Finance Director for the city.
Okay, so I'm gonna divert away from the Revcore first, and I'm gonna go right straight to the Vesta, because we've got two attorneys in the room now, and I'm gonna kind of let those guys deal with what they have to deal with. But so we actually had in our work session yesterday, I don't know if you guys watched or listened in, but we actually had our emergency manager, Doug Roth, our GIS specialist, our manager, Eric Simmons, and we also had Jim McLean, our IT director, kind of look over everything, make sure that everything was compatible, that everything is going to work together, and it sounds like everything is pretty much on track and on board, because it's all per the manufacturer's recommendations from Digicom, so that we know that the phone system and the logger, everything ties together and it basically works together, so that we don't run into the situation that we're in right now again. So if you guys have any questions or comments, we have most of those people in the room right now, but I think that's just a real quick 2-minute synopsis of what we discussed, and obviously you can review that if you guys want to go back. But I really think the last two proposals that we have on the table right now are the 911 phone system, which is 15 years old and it needs to be upgraded, and that's the big one, the $422,000 10-11 month waiting period, and that it won't be billed to us prior to the system being live and in place and installed in the facility, correct?
As of right now, yes.
Okay. And then the logger, the Eventide, right?
The Eventide, yeah. Yeah, they're all spec
Which is all
solutions.
compatible through Digicom, the way that we understand it, and that everything will work the way it's supposed to work.
Digicom is a designated Motorola provider and a support, yes.
Right.
And the Eventide is part of that package. Eventide is actually built by Motorola.
Okay. And that was around 102,000, I believe. I don't have it up here, but it was around that.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, which one do you guys want to?
It doesn't matter, we can just take on the whole package if you want.
All right, Commissioner. So, from our discussion yesterday, and I'll speak for all of us unless I don't say something correctly, then obviously correct me, but I think we are comfortable now moving forward, now that, it sounds like we have everything that's going to work together simultaneously. Obviously, we've already approved the guide card system and the batteries, so those, I assume, are already, those are moving forward. We approved the increase of the fees from the $1.40 to the $1.97, and I think that's taking place and moving forward, although we won't be able to get any of those revenues until probably Q2.
And then just, Lori wanted me to follow up on the card system. I think the contract was attorney was reviewing it, so that's kind of still in limbo right now. And until that's done, I don't believe it's been.
So basically, it was approved, but we just haven't moved forward with it. Doug, do you have anything that you want to add on that
Just, yeah,
guide card system?
but not the guide card system.
Okay.
So and Commissioner, the guide card system contract, I do have a copy of that. I figure once we approve these phone systems and the logger, then at that point, my suggestion would be to get all three of those contracts together, have our IT folks review those, as well as the stuff that's already been reviewed, just make sure that everything's in line, the contractual technicalities are in line with everything that we discussed yesterday, and then at that point, sign those things. Because the contracts are just as technical as the,
Right.
as the
RFP.
RFP that was put out. And so,
Okay.
that would be my suggestion. I think that probably reviewing those as a whole together is probably in everybody's best interest, just to make sure everything still lines up.
So, we probably don't have any of those contracts, or do we?
I've got the one for the guide cards.
For the Vesta 911, after we get the approval that the funds are there, then I'll move forward with Lumen and the director of this region, and not Lumen, it's the Motorola engineers. They'll draft up the contract for how everything needs to be installed, and there's checkpoints as the install goes. And once that's done, but yeah, as soon as you guys say yes to it, then I'll get you a contract, or what they're going to consider a contract, and I'll forward it to Vern.
And I think it's super important as we get these contracts in, just that everything's in the name of the E911 board. I know we've had some issues before with different things being put in the names of different people. Let's get it in the name of the E911 board to the extent that we need some kind of a licensing agreement that would allow city personnel or other folks to deal with these tech support people. We can do that, but we need to be sure that this stuff is in the E911 board's name.
Right.
Okay. All right, Doug.
So it sounds like the contracts have not been drafted yet or finalized yet? No. So in a conference call I had with some of the mapping folks, including Jeff Tucker with Motorola and Jeff Freeland, and discussions looking at the Vesta map local. And then I emailed a colleague up in Montrose 911, Matt Godish, who sounds like they're also under contract. They're ahead of us a little bit. I certainly have concerns about the map local product and what it's going to do for us. I received that email yesterday afternoon after our meeting, and what he outlines kind of outlines the same concerns that I have. So at this point, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to make the mapping function the same way that it does now in that system that they currently have. We'll do our best. I know that mapping is just one component of this E911 system. I did request a meeting just a few minutes ago with Jeff Tucker to discuss the options. I hear that there are different mapping options that they have. So I want to make sure that we review those mapping options before that goes into contract, so that we get the one that's going to suit us best. If this is a system that suits us best, we need to have the mapping option that also suits us best. So,
Doug, after this meeting, I'll put you in touch with James. He's the Motorola engineer that could give you better answers than Jeff Tucker.
yeah, Jeff Tucker doesn't know much, but Jeff Freeland certainly does, and I've been getting good answers. They're just not the answers that I want to hear. So I just want to make it clear that I want to be able to do my job in getting the correct data to dispatch, and also looping Lori in on this so that she knows what the dispatchers need to see on that mapping software, and that one component will function for dispatch. So, so I'm going to be working on that. Just want to let you know.
So are we going to be able to make this system work for the mapping purposes?
I mean, it will work. Yes, it will work. How well will it work? I mean, it depends on what the needs of the dispatchers are. As far as a heads up, it's the heads up mapping display. Getting them quickly all the information they need. My hope, again, was after hearing that the dispatchers, what they basically do is they pull up the 911 system, and then they pull up our county mapping system because that gives them a better interface. And then they work back and forth between the two of them. Ideally, we'd go away from that, and we'd have one complete mapping system that it's functional and modern, and they wouldn't have to use multiple sources. So I
don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, but I mean, isn't this the same kind of situation we got into before now? Where we've got a pretty critical component to the system that now we don't know if it's going to work and we might be jumping back and forth? I mean, am I hearing this right?
I want to be able to say that this appears to meet all our needs, and it's just I'm ready to get behind the implementation, but it doesn't seem that the mapping component is highly functional.
Thank you.
So what options do we have? What other options do you have?
I've requested a meeting with these folks, the salesperson, Jeff Tucker, and the Motorola GIS and mapping product manager with Motorola, Jeff Freeland, and hopefully review those actual options.
So how critical, because the mapping is was one of the big requests basically from the fire, the EMS side of it, correct? If I remember right. How critical is this component for us to make a decision on moving forward?
I mean, that's a good
Is it
question.
5%? Is it 10%? Is it 95%? I mean,
Only Lori Johnson, the dispatchers, can answer that for you in their workflow, because I don't pretend to know their workflow. When I look at things, and when I look at, people have been talking about Next Gen 911 for a while, which will be heavily map-based. When I look at a company that really can't even match the functionality of a mapping system that's 15 years old in their current offerings, and yet the next thing that we're going to be looking at upgrading to in hopefully 5 to 7 years will hopefully be more next-gen capable, and you will be dependent on the mapping interface. So, where they, where are they going? How important is it right now? Only Lori can answer that.
so I'm gonna go back to last week's meeting. Lori didn't have anything to say that was negative about the mapping system, and I'm assuming that she has obviously reviewed.
The mapping that you're talking about for the fire department, if I remember right, all of that mapping is done in CAD, which is a completely separate map from the phone system.
Gotcha.
The phone system maps Annie Alley, which is, if you call 911, it tells us where you are, gives us a location. If it gives us a geocode or whatever they look for out of that to parse that information out. And then that is then passed over into the CAD system through another connection and populated in the call as a copy and paste. I do know that. And the key component about what he's saying is they're on the hook and don't get payment until it works the way it's supposed to work.
Correct, and I think that was something that was brought up yesterday. At least you have somebody that's on the hook for the entire project, and until it gets functioning, you actually have somebody that's on the hook for the entire process. So,
Right.
I
You know,
definitely understand your concerns, and
Yeah, and
again,
I want to let the board know it,
right.
so that when we move forward, I'm going to do my best. But, and again, Montrose 911 is ahead of us here by a number of months, and per Matt's email, it says, it seems like Geocom doesn't offer up customization unless the GS or leadership person firmly and repeatedly asks for it. They'll accommodate changes to a certain degree. My guess is they don't have enough staff to accommodate frequent change requests for all customers. These are the things I'm pointing out in his email that concern me. So, just wanted to make the board aware of that. And I understand that mapping, at this point in an E911 system, is one component, you know, and it's showing some information. And we can do our best to supplement that with other internal county fed mapping that provides a richer mapping environment. It's just not ideal. So. But I plan on still having this meeting with these folks and hopefully really exploring the options that they do have.
So we're on the path to actually working with the system provider to actually figure out a solution to what we need as far as the phone system with the maps. It sounds like, along with the same situation that Montrose is in.
Yeah. And it sounds like they're going to deal with it, but I don't know if, yeah. I was surprised at this, at the limitations of this offering, but I have not seen anything else as far as any other offering from this vendor or any other vendor.
So then it just, basically what, I guess what you're envisioning is as soon as I call 911 on my cell phone, the map's gonna show up exactly where I'm at. And without even a description to a dispatcher, in case I forget to tell the dispatcher where I'm at, a GPS location or whatever, and then it ties it to the map, and then it goes out to the dispatcher through CAD or wherever it goes from there.
Yeah.
And that's not as next-gen ready as your,
Well, from my understanding, the dispatchers like to see owner name information, really nice labels with addresses, fire hydrants, power lines, transmission lines, all of these things that we typically show on an EMS type of a map. And it is difficult to do that. And in reading Matt's email here, it says that they lean a lot on Esri base map services, which the problem with that is that commercial mapping services for our part of the country, the state, are quite poor because we don't have enough, they don't have enough need to come in here and update our base maps very often. So the base maps are quite poor.
and I understand what you're saying, and again, I understand your concern. However, I don't want to delay a decision
Sure.
for one component of a 15-year-old system that it seems like we're struggling on. It's going to be a 16-year-old system by the time we get it here anyway. So I guess that's my bigger concern. So I'm trying to put them into concerns here. Like we were informed yesterday that, 20 years ago, a system would last 15 to 20 years. Now we're looking at, 3 to 5 years. So every time we delay, we're just putting ourselves further and further in the hole. That's my biggest concern. And I understand the concern of not maybe being 100% compatible, but I think we have enough information to move forward to make a good informed decision. Commissioner Copenhaver, do you have anything?
I can't believe they cannot make these systems work together. That just really bothers me.
So, we're looking at two systems today. One is the Eventide logger at the 102,755, and the other one is the Vesta 911 phone system at 421,009.97. Is that correct? Okay. And then we'll go back to the issue with Revcore. What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
I move we set aside the funds for the Eventide and the
Vesta 911.
Vesta 911 system to be expended and contingent upon making sure our mapping interfaces work.
So,
So,
so I think that's gonna be tricky because, I mean, I think we need to figure out, I mean, if that's the direction you wanna go, if you wanna get mapping interfaces that are gonna work, and I would confirm before you expend the funds. But, I mean, once we expend the funds and the contracts come out, I mean, there's a chance that this might not work. I mean, what we're hearing is it might not work. And so, you know, I mean, I don't think you can do it contingent on it working or not working. I think we need to know now, or know before we do it, you know, or certainly run the risk of if you guys move forward with this, it might not work.
okay. I'll
Is
let-
this something we
I
need
think
to
I
have
want to
voted on?
kind of help to clarify something, but I'm going to ask Doug a few questions. In the mapping production, is this system related or mapping product related? Is it the development of the maps in the system that is the problem? Or is it the system accepting or having their own system? I guess, did you understand that question?
It's in the process they have set up right now, is that they use a third-party vendor that developed this interface. The interface has limitations. We can work with it, and we will provide a product. My concerns is that it's not a step forward. At best, it will match what we have in place now.
So the question I had basically on that is it a symptom of what you're purchasing? Is what we're purchasing is the Vesta and the 911 system. That system, as it is, will operate the phone system and stuff and accept the current mapping.
Yes.
And then changes by the third-party system, third-party company, can be worked with later on. Those adjustments can be made.
But they can be worked on as all of it's being built together. And going to that point, we don't have to make payment until it works as it's supposed to work. And that's according to Doug, myself, you.
I just wanted to kind of clarify, is it a system, you know, the actual phone system? Is it okay to purchase that system? And the third party is not part of that main system. The adjustments can be made
On the go,
on
yes.
the go with that.
Yeah.
With the third party. So, we do have a motion on the floor, and I have not heard a second yet, so I'm assuming that motion is gonna die to the lack of a second. I guess my comment to that is we're not getting anything worse with the mapping system right now as it currently stands. It's not necessarily upgrading that component of it today, but it doesn't mean that we can't work on that component and make sure that it's better or more functionable with that mapping system for the phone system upgrade. So,
Want to try it again?
oh, yeah. Go ahead.
So move we set aside the funds from the E911 fund for the Vesta system and the
Eventide.
Eventide system.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to set aside the funds and approve those funds of $102,755 for the Eventide logger system, $421,009.97 for the Vesta 911 phone system. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. There you go. Get our contracts, and that way the attorneys can then review those. Those do have to be in the E911 Authority Board. And I think we'll move forward. We'll look at the contracts and
Call him after the meeting.
get going.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the last thing that we have to wrestle with, which now I'm gonna put the discussion basically with the attorneys, is the Revcore logger that we currently have right now. Because it sounds like the Eventide logger could be here within short 30 days or something,
I'd say 30 to 90.
30 to 90. So
Yes, sir.
hopefully by the first of the year.
Yeah, it's somewhere between here and New Jersey.
Okay. How do you guys want to tackle this Revcore system? I know that our attorney has voiced his concerns, and I don't know if you guys have had a lot of time to communicate and.
Maybe I can start. And good afternoon, Commissioners. Patrick Coleman, Cortez City Attorney. So, and I apologize, I kind of came into this late, and I'm probably the most ignorant and least well-versed in the items that you all are discussing today. So, but my first goal was to figure out, well, what is it we're trying to do, and what are the obligations of Revcore vis-a-vis the other parties. And so I kind of went to a basic level and said, where are our written agreements? And I found a 2020 agreement that, based on my review of it, and I just found it on my way out the door coming over here, the city clerk pulled it up, but it appears to be the initial contract, and it talks about installation and maintenance for the first year by Revcore. And then we've got a Rev Shield service level agreement, and that contract is dated April 5th, 2020. And then
Mr. Coleman, not to interrupt, but who were the parties to that contract?
and that's between the City of Cortez and Stonehenge Properties Limited, DBA Revcore.
Thanks.
And then we have this is kind of, I got from Mr. McLaren and the guys at this table, a copy of a document entitled Rev Shield Service Level Agreement. It's not signed and it's not dated. It appears to be it's a digital signature possibly, but in any event, at the bottom it says 5/1/21. So it looks like this is the agreement that extends the maintenance responsibilities beyond the initial term that was set forth in the signed agreement between the city and Revcore. But it's unsigned and it doesn't say who the parties are. It has signature lines for customer acknowledgement, but doesn't say who the customer is anywhere in here, and so it's their form contract. But in any event, so you know, I'm almost at the point, because I went through my predecessor's files to see if he had something hidden in there that was signed, and didn't find anything. I'm almost at the point where I'm going to have to contact Revcore and say, you know, give us the most recent document that you have signatures on, and you know, without admitting that we don't have anything signed beyond the original contract. But with that said, my predecessor also sent a letter in February of this year that states that they are terminating the contract dated 5 April 2020, which is the signed one that we have, and that it'll be effective 30 days from the date of the letter, no later than March 15, 2020. So I guess the question, this letter appears to comply with the termination requirements set forth in the original signed agreement. But yet, it seems like you guys have been trading emails back and forth with Revcore as if there's an existing agreement that's still in place. Would that be? Yeah, okay, so I don't know if there's a separate agreement out there that this didn't terminate, or if they went back and signed a new one, but unfortunately, I think Ian's almost as new to the process on this one as I am, but we don't have the institutional history, and I'm guessing it was maybe handled by attorneys more so
Well-
than you guys.
Well,
but-
here's the big problem we have from the E911 board's perspective. We're not on these agreements. The city's on these agreements. And I don't understand how that happened or why that happened. That should have never happened, but it happened. And so now, to the extent that Revcore didn't perform its obligations under this agreement, it's really going to be somewhat in the city's boat to go after Revcore for any kind of breach that took place, if it did take place. I mean, that's kind of where we're sitting as an E911 board.
Which brings up a question that Commissioner Copenhaver brought up yesterday, when, so it's been we've had it for 2 years, basically. So it's, whether it worked 100% or it didn't work 100% in the first year, and then there was I'll call it an upgrade or something else that happened to it. At that point in time, was that something that we did or the upgrade did that it wouldn't be compatible with that? I mean, maybe you can phrase it better than I can, Commissioner, but, is it something that, are we wasting our time by trying to go after them for not?
So my understanding is the upgrade that Commissioner Copenhaver was talking about was the upgrade to the new radios in
Okay.
dispatch. It's also my understanding that the RFP explained that the dispatch center would be getting new radio models, and that the Revcore system would have to work with the new radio models. And when the new radio models were installed, it did not work.
So that's
But
when it,
up till then, it did work. They were able to record and stuff like they're supposed to, or not?
No,
So it never has worked?
pretty much, no.
So if it's never worked,
I mean, it records like Lori tried to explain the other day. It records 5 channels. But if
5
you're
out of
supposed to be
15.
recording 15 and it's only recording 5, it doesn't work.
so if they said they were going to be able to record 15 and they didn't do that, they only record 5, then that's a problem.
Oh, yeah, and
I mean, that's a breach of that contract, the initial contract from April of 2020. And I get it, maybe it's not a huge sum of money, but to let them walk isn't right. Now, how far you guys think that the city should take this, or how far the city thinks it should take this, I mean, that's all stuff that needs to be hashed out. But, I mean, there are steps short of litigation that you can take to try to, get some sort of resolution to this. I mean, there's all different things that one could do to try to compel Revcore to do something. I mean, if they said they were going to do something, they didn't do it. That's a problem.
in trying to figure out who the parties are, as you mentioned, at least the one signed agreement, the city is the other side of the equation. But Shay, I believe you told me that at some point Revcore was saying they wouldn't deal with the city because it's the E911 authority's equipment, something to that effect.
Well, that's what was presented to us right out of the gate. That was the
Maybe that's right.
justification for this whole new system out of the gate. Isn't that correct, Mr. Anderson?
That is correct.
Which made me think that perhaps there is some written agreement that the 911 authority has that would lead them to believe that they need to deal with you rather than the city. But of course, nobody can find that, and
I don't think that exists.
Yeah.
I'm fairly confident that does not exist.
you have the only contract, I believe. I
Yeah.
don't think anything else exists that I'm aware of or that we can find.
And there's nothing I've seen, and I believe I included that signed contract in the packet that I give you,
Yeah.
the board.
I think to just let Revcore walk would set a really bad precedent. That's my opinion.
And I agree with that. I mean, like I said yesterday, I mean, hold their feet to the fire, but at some point in time too, we have to look at, and it was even recommended by our panel that we had in here yesterday.
Well, so I just want to be clear too.
I mean, I'm just looking at time, I'm looking at energy, and I'm not saying just let them off scot-free, but I'm just saying what degree are we going to move this to?
Well, I guess what I'm saying
We've
is,
had it for 2 years. Has it functioned properly 100% of the time? No.
No.
Has it recorded some of the stuff? Yes. 5 out of 15, so it's a third. And we just figured out we made a bad decision. Like I said yesterday, I'll be the first one to raise my hand. I was the only one here. We made a bad decision on what was presented to us. We didn't do our due diligence in checking it out. I think we've done a better job this time in doing our due diligence and finding the systems that are compatible and that are gonna work together. In the grand scheme of life, I don't know, we've had it for 2 years and kind of the recommendation yesterday was like, I mean, how much energy are we gonna really spend on the costs that we've, and again,
well, that's really up
get
to
what
you
you're
guys.
saying,
And what I'm
but-
trying to say too is that, I mean, I think it's more than likely that I'm not going to be in a position where I can hold their feet to the fire.
It won't be
It's
you
gonna have
because
to be.
it's
gonna have to
the
be in
contract
city.
is signed by the city of Cortez. However, we are the 911 board. So I'm hoping that whichever way we direct you is the way that it's going to move forward, because the contract is in the city of Cortez's name.
Well, based on the records that we can find,
Right.
are we picking a battle that we're going to be able to hold their feet to the fire? I mean, we're lacking, and none of us know why, but we are.
Well, if we have an agreement signed from 2020 and they didn't live up to that agreement right out of the gate, then you've got to breach a contract.
Yeah, and the
I mean-
letter from Mike Green, it essentially just says the application provided by Stonehenge, which is the parent company of Revcore, is not compatible with the Motorola MC7500 AIS radios as you represented. Therefore, please consider the contract terminated effective 30 days from the date of this letter, no later than March 15, 2022. The city expects refunds of any and all unused fees for licenses, services, or product not used to date. And presumably this is for the 2022
Yeah.
year, which means that there was, the contract was entered into in April of 2020, so the annual contract would have expired April 5th of 2020, and it renewed, or April 2021, excuse me, and it renewed, and it was due to expire April of 2022, but we terminated it effective March. So there's about 3 weeks worth of time for the contract that it was terminated. So,
If it didn't work for a couple
yeah,
years,
if you want to go
which
back
is what I'm hearing.
and sue for damages, for the prior breach, that would be a separate issue. But here, it appears that perhaps they owe us, less than 1/12 of what the expenses that have been paid for 2022, up through April of 2022. But are they still doing anything? Are they supporting the equipment or anything?
They'll do minimal support right now, put in a ticket, screen capture stuff, low level. Yeah.
And I guess in my head, it sounds like somebody sold us a product, and then the product didn't do what it said it was gonna do right out of the gate. And so, I mean, how important that is to this board or to the city, I don't know. But certainly, it sounds like from what's been represented,
So
there was a breach.
I'm gonna make this real simple from my point, is, again, it all comes back to dollars and cents, in my mind. And for what we've spent on it, and I'm not giving them a free pass, because I think they should be held accountable somehow. However, how much energy are we gonna spend on this, and how much more time and dollars are we gonna spend fighting something that we paid $21,000 for the system, and a $3,000 a year annual contract, correct? So our annual contract is $3,000 a year, so we paid that for 2 years. It was terminated in March of 2022. They only had till April of 2022 to move forward with anyway. I guess we used a system for 2 years, whether it worked 100% or whether it didn't, some of that is on us too. We spent 10.5 a year. So I'm not sure how much energy globally that we want to spend on.
That's up to this board and to the city.
Right, and I'm just speaking my mind. I'm only 1/3 of this board. I think we have a lot of,
From the previous time when you purchased this, there was like, what was it, 5 bids? 5 or 6 bids?
And it was by far the
Eventide
cheapest.
has 2 different systems on here that they presented before. I mean, they have the Digicom, but they have a, how do you say that, Goserico?
Yeah, Goserico. Eventide
System.
Goserico.
Eventide Goserico?
Which one are you looking at?
Well, this is when they came in and bid, and we took the Revcore.
that would have been in late 2019, I
This is
believe.
2020, April
Or
14th,
2020.
2020.
I have the one on 2/17 of 2020.
That's the date of the bid.
Yeah, but this is what Digicom presented the first time through. Is that what you're looking at?
Well, we were just looking at these bids that came in before, and Eventide basically bid 2 different systems,
Yeah.
okay? That's what I'm asking. So we're going with the Digicom this time, or the other?
Digicom is the provider. The Eventide is the product.
Okay. So that was just 2 different providers
Yes, sir.
bid the Eventide system last time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's what we were just trying to figure out.
Okay.
Those presentations. We do not, you'd have to look up what the
Yeah.
attachment
What that
is,
is.
so.
There is an attachment to it, but I would need to get it out of the books. I don't have a digital copy of it, but I could get it.
Which was probably their base bids, which you might have right now, but I want to say it was substantially the lowest bid, if I remember
was.
right.
Oh, it was. The bids are on there. I mean, what the bids
Oh.
were, the amounts are, and it was like 25,000 with the first year's service contract.
Service
It was like,
contract.
whatever it came to.
5-year maintenance plan.
Yeah, with the maintenance plans, $25,097. Like the Eventide with Digicom bid was 47,000 something without the maintenance. That was the next lowest bid, I think.
Okay, gentlemen, we have a decision to make as far as direction, because this does now have to go to the city attorney, because the contract is with the city of Cortez and not with the E911 board. So they do have to talk to the attorney, whether they tell you they're not going to or not, they really have to. What are your thoughts?
I think before we make that decision, I think we should look and see what that attachment is.
Okay.
I really do. I mean, I
How
think we
long
should
would-
look and see what that attachment is and see what we actually got there.
I think these folks can proceed, and we'll figure out the Revcore as we go along.
Yeah, and I guess I would add that, as Commissioner Candelaria mentioned, that we're basically less than $30,000 into the deal, counting the maintenance costs and the purchase of the system and everything. Obviously, if you're going to pursue damages for breach of contract, you have to prove some damages, and even if 100% of what we paid was considered our damages, a $30,000 lawsuit is probably not an efficient use of anybody's time, although a nasty letter from the attorney maybe gets them to refund some of it. But what I don't know, and maybe you all or some of the other people in the room might have actual damages over and above what we put out of pocket, were there calls missed, or, hopefully nobody died, or a house burned down, or something like that, that we could attribute directly to the malfunctioning of the system. And of course, then that would greatly expand our damages and make it much more worthwhile to pursue. But at this point, I don't know. I haven't heard anybody bring specific examples of, other than just the headache of dealing with these guys for 6 months or more.
You know what I would suggest is, Mr. Coleman and I can continue to look at this. Maybe we just start with a letter. Sometimes that can be
That's kind of my
effective.
recommendation.
And I would,
you consider a joint letter from the E911 board and the city?
I'd be happy to help draft and
Sure.
sign, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that might be a starting point, and I would just leave it at that. What we decide to do after that, we can decide when the time comes.
Okay.
Because, again, as it was presented to us yesterday, and I'm not downplaying $30,000 or $25,000 at all, because it's all taxpayer money, but at some point in time, it's like, a mistake was made, and now we just have to move on. And
Yeah.
we've all made mistakes in our life. I'll be the first one to raise my hand to say I've made mistakes in my life, and probably will make more in my life. But let's go get the big fish to fry, and let's write the letter and get on with our way. I just don't see the dollar value.
Well, let's write the letter.
Yeah, let's write the letter, and then we'll
And it's always good to have a replacement in place before you make the current guy angry.
But the
'cause-
letter's already really been written.
Yeah, the
Because
termination,
the
and that's what I'm not
termination-
sure what happened.
The termination was written in.
We're still dealing with them, even though the contract was terminated.
Feeding back.
Yeah.
So I think we now have made a decision today to move forward with another system that's going to be compatible and work. The only thing that I want to highlight, and I wrote this down yesterday, and I think that this is really critical, is do we have the data backup that will go to the Eventide of the 3 years or whatever that we are supposed to carry, that this logger,
That the logger logged?
that the logger logged? Yeah.
Actually, what we do, if we do pass this on to the county of Dolores, like you guys were talking about, what we'll do is we'll just set up a remote access, and if we need to pull records off of it, we'll be able to pull records off of it because it's designed to keep the records for the 3-year period. And then before we take it out there and set it up at their facility or work with them to set it up at their facility, I will take a full backup of the system.
So
that
we won't lose anything that, as far as ours for that. So that was one question that was brought up that I had written down. And then the other one is really, and I don't know, it's through the accountability committee or whatever, but to make sure that when we're done, that we have 100% functioning from day one and not,
On the new Eventide?
yes, on the new system.
Yes, sir. That's
So
yeah.
I guess those are my two caveats to everything that we've discussed, is to make sure that we're 100% on the follow-up, to make sure that we don't ever run into this situation again.
Right. I agree.
Okay. All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
I would like to say that I really appreciate the board and the due diligence. I think this is a great thing, and I, you know, this has been kind of a process. But I think, you know, getting everybody in the room to discuss this, is gonna help prevent a Revcore thing again. And, just so the board knows, I appreciate that. I think it was good.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, well, with that, we are done with this E911 board meeting. So,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to adjourn this E911 board meeting. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.